Hi, and thanks for joining me on a super special edition of Three Guys, a Lot of Beer, and the New England Beer Revolution. We are boldly going where two guys have never gone before on wine. We're going to the beer world, which seems to be very popular right now. I'm joined by two very special guests, Mr. Eli Ross, who's been on our show, I think this is his fifth or sixth time over the past 7-8 years, who knows, wine guru and turns out beer guru also. And I'm also joined by Mr. Mike Task, a Connecticut home brewer, and also another beer enthusiast. And I will be getting schooled today because I'm going to be finding stuff out that I don't know anything about. So Eli, I'd like to jump right in and tell us a little about what we're doing today.
Sure, yeah, so sort of as we were talking before the show, sort of like we do with wine, we kind of come with a sequence, right? And the idea here is to go sort of from less flavorful, but still interesting, starting over here, to your right, and then kind of move up into some more complex and different flavors, and then finally finishing up with a big bad stout from down in Stonington.
And these are all Connecticut beers?
These are Connecticut, with the exception of we have one Massachusetts interloper here in the middle from up near Boston. But yeah, these are all Connecticut breweries. And as we go, we can talk a little bit more about the growth in New England, but especially in Connecticut, has just been off the charts in recent years. And the quality is just so much better than maybe even 3, 4, 5 years ago. So.
And we'll also talk about, of course, Spencer Thrall,
yep,
who's contributing a lot of his farmland, that used to grow tobacco,
yep,
to producing some of the
hops. Yeah, and so that's I guess maybe the next trend is to go super local, right? And the second beer we're going to have is
we'll go into him on there.
Yep, is using all those local hops and grains. So.
All right, so what can you tell us about the first one?
First one is from it's from Connecticut Valley Brewing in South Windsor. They've been open about a year, have a really nice tap room, and it's a Pilsner called Sky's the Limit. They're big aviation enthusiasts at that brewery, so all the beers, most of them have an aviation-themed name or something like that. So I have a cold one here. So
this one's particularly interesting from the aviation standpoint because there's actually a Corsair on the front of that can, which is actually the Connecticut state airplane. So
I didn't know Connecticut had a state airplane.
Apparently they do, yeah. So.
Yeah, if you go to the New England Air Museum up by Bradley, they have one there, and it's featured as the state airplane of Connecticut. So.
And like most beer, at least I'm assuming, this should be served chilled, I believe, correct?
Yeah, particularly this style. The Pilsners generally need to be in the, call it 45-degree range, something like that.
Beautiful color.
And this is an interesting beer because even the paler beers that I've had from them, they make a Kolsch, for example, and they tend to all follow the kind of hazy New England IPA kind of platform there. Even this Kolsch, which is from Germany originally, generally a very clear, very brilliant beer.
That's what I got the moment I smelled that German-esque
quality
of the beer.
Right, and this is a German-style Pils. So they seem to have gone pretty traditional with this one.
Yeah, and I think, for people that are just getting into craft beer, this is definitely a gateway beer from, say, the more traditional lagers, the Budweiser and sorts. But this is a lot more flavor, a lot more hop bitterness that you get.
Which I like. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
I used to drink beer a lot, but that was like 20 years ago. Now there's, of course, the variety that you can drink now is beyond what you could get 20 years ago. And this is exactly the type of beer that I'd be drawn to if I was going into this for the first time, right off the start. Really beautiful color. It's got a nice nose, and it's got a great flavor.
And the other thing that these guys did, which is sort of been a trend in Connecticut as well, is they started off working with a contract brewer. So before they had a facility, there was a brewery, I think down, Wolcott area, Waterbury, yeah, called Shabine. And so they actually brewed a lot of their beers before they had a physical site. So there's literally a term called a gypsy brewer that they'll just go and set up shop. And as Mike was saying, they're really more well known for big hazy New England IPAs like we'll have later on. But
now,
yeah.
Are these all produced in small quantities? Are these shipped out of state, or are these pretty much just in state right now?
This brewery in particular, I believe, is not available out of state. As Eli said before, they haven't been brewing in large quantities for very long. It was Pioneer who was brewing their Trailblazer, their flagship IPA, for a long time. And Connecticut Valley actually came along and purchased the rights to that beer off of them and the recipe and everything and started brewing it. But they also expanded and started brewing all kinds of different styles. And it's really a nice facility now.
Well, I think what's interesting about beer, other than some of the vineyards that are in Connecticut, is you don't need the acreage. You just need to have a halfway decent setup and facility, and then source your items. You can source them locally, but you don't need the acreage to start. your own
Yeah,
type of
it's very rare for, say, a brewer to also be a maltster, you know, to actually start
Right.
with raw barley, malt it, take it all the way through the process. That's really pretty rare.
Yeah, I think brewing, I mean, you can talk more about this, Mike, as we go on, but in fact, that book I brought is written by a guy who started as a chef. So I think brewing has a lot more in common maybe with like baking, where it's very precise, and the creativity and really the heartbeat of a brewery is the brewer and the recipes that they can generate, so.
Absolutely.
And what's the price point? The beer's a little bit more on the pricier side. Do you buy them by the can, by the six-pack?
These are typically, so this one I got at the brewery, but again, you could pick it up at a typical package store. These run about $11 a four-pack. So, the days, unfortunately, of the $6, $7 good six-pack are gone now. The other thing you'll see that's also almost gone are bottles, right? Cans are sort of the way to go nowadays.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's at the lower end. I mean, so generally the prices are in four-packs. So you probably go between 10 and 20 is where most things are nowadays for a four-pack of 16-ounce cans. So at least you get a little bit more.
That's interesting because you pour 4 cans, it's probably almost, is that almost a wine bottle? A little bit less than that?
Yeah, I think a wine's about 25 ounces for $7.50. So yeah, it's a little bit more.
A little bit more, but it's about the same price point for an average wine when you look at it that way.
Right, and now speaking of alcohol content and wine, right, that is one of the differences. Generally, beer is a little lower. I think this is probably in the 5% range, which, again, by like kind of adjunct lager, Bud Light, Coors Light, it's higher than those, but as the night goes on, we'll step up the alcohol content a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, once again, this is a good gateway because the alcohol content doesn't smack you in the face. You get more flavor than you do alcohol. It's very refreshing beer, too. This would be a great summer beer.
Right. And it's really a showcase for Mike, I think the Pilsner, the malt, and the yeast that's used.
It's a showcase for the Pilsner malt, and it's a showcase for the noble, what's the so-called noble hops. These are
Very
these are
traditional,
hops that
yeah.
are very, very traditional, Satz, Hallertau hops that traditionally come from Germany, Czech Republic, in that area. That really don't contribute a lot of the kind of pininess or fruitiness that we get from a lot of modern American hops. They're much more neutral in their flavor profile, and they contribute a nice soft bitterness. So it highlights that in the malt. One of the key things with brewing something like a Pilsner is that you need to keep the yeast the flavors derived from the yeast kind of subdued. You want it to be nice and clean, which is a big part of the reason why you ferment and age these beers cold.
Yeah. All right, so coming up, number 2 here.
So this is from Back East Brewing, which is in Bloomfield, Connecticut. And this Shad Derby, I think most people from this area know, I guess the running of the Shad is a Windsor, Connecticut type thing on that part of the Connecticut River. And I think for the first time ever, this beer is now brewed with a bunch of local ingredients from our friend Spencer Thrall and Thrall Family Malts. So he started the first malt house in Connecticut late last year. So maybe you can describe what happens at a malt house while I pour this.
Sure. So, one of the differences, many differences, I guess, between wine and beer is that in the world of wine, and please correct me if I speak out of turn, this is not my area, but when you crush a grape, you've got fully fermentable fruit juice there. If you just take barley, you harvest it, you mix it with water, you put yeast in it, you're just going to kind of end up with yeasty oatmeal water. It's not going to be beer. It won't ferment. So one of the things you have to do to barley to actually make it fermentable is to malt it. And so essentially that consists of the partial germination of the barley itself. That activates enzymes, which you later use in the mash. You then stop that germination process, kiln it to get to the darkness and the flavor profile that you want. And then those enzymes that I mentioned are activated. So then when you pour that in, you put that into hot water in the so-called mash, those enzymes and all the starches in the malt mix into the water, and they're essentially broken down by those enzymes into fermentable sugar.
Is there a time frame like there is with wine, or is this a quicker process than there would be with wine?
The mashing process is rather quick. I mean, you can get full conversion in a half an hour to an hour. Depends on the temperature, and the temperatures impact other properties of the beer, but it's a relatively quick process. The malting process, I'm not going to speak to exactly how long that takes, but it's on the order of days, I think, to completely.
And what's unique about what he's doing is that these are also not only malted in Connecticut, but grown. The barley that he's using is grown locally as well. So it really is, farm to table. I saw a post that somebody had the other day that's, no farms, no beer, right? This is really an agricultural product And one thing I didn't mention, this is a pale ale. So this is,
Yeah.
so it's an ale, so it's not fermented as cold as the Pilsner that we started with, but there's definitely some similarities I think you'll find here between the first two.
Yeah.
And actually, the Thralls have been in Connecticut since they're one of the first
Yeah,
residents,
1650 or thereabouts.
So they've been working
Yep.
the fields in Connecticut for quite
Yep.
a long time.
Anybody that flies out of Bradley, you'll see the tobacco barns, and that's sort of their legacy business. But yeah, cheers
Cheers.
to them. Yeah.
So they're growing the hops there as well, right?
Yeah, he's done some small, kind of, I mean, what I was explained was that growing hops and tobacco from a trellising and the verticality of it isn't that different. So, with empty and open space that they had, it wasn't a big deal. But like we talked about before the show, really, most hops that's used in mass quantities is coming from the West Coast, just based on, that's where I would say, as we talked about, is most like wine, right? There is some definite regional preference there, but
Well, compared to the first one, this is really smooth. The flavor sort of is more of a mellow flavor in your mouth than the first beer.
yeah, and I think a beer that probably everybody, for me, it was probably the first craft beer, certainly like when I moved to Connecticut, that you could find was Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, the green bottle, is a pretty widely kind of perfect example of this style. So
I got to try this. We do it with wine, but beer, of course, you got to do it. I'm going to try a little piece of sausage with a beer,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and see how that works, just like if it was a glass of wine.
Absolutely. Yeah, an interesting thing about the American Pale Ale is that you look at it and you taste it and you think, okay, it's a relatively pale beer, it's got some hops in it, it seems simple, but there's actually a pretty broad range that the American Pale Ale can take on. You've got much softer versions that aren't very bitter, aren't very hop forward, a little more of the malt showing through. Then you've got something like a bottle of the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is more hop forward, more bitter, a little more West Coast in style. So there's actually quite a broad range that they can take on.
And food pairing with beer is just as popular as wine pairing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, that sausage is a mild summer sausage. I opened it up early. This show is going to air April, May. But this works actually perfectly with this style of beer. Very
speaking of
perfect.
things that we'll hopefully be doing April, May, to me this is a perfect beer. You cut the grass, right? You come inside, you pop one of these. It's it's got enough complexity that it carries your interest, but not heavy, goes down real smooth.
Yeah, I think probably the first three beers that we're trying here tonight probably all fit that profile. They're all complex enough to be interesting, but also very refreshing.
Very refreshing. It's my style.
And I would use the analogy for for Bobby as we talk about wine is that that these are more kind of that more along the akin to a white wine, something to have with
Yes.
food and work your way in. You'll see at the end here, these are more, I would almost put them in like the big Syrah, right? Kind of these things that you could have with food, but they're really to be sort of savored on their own in that way. But
I can see that actually. You can sort of start with the Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio
Right.
oriented, then you sort of move up. Just if you're actually doing a regular wine tasting, you just
Yep.
go the same profile. But two winners. These are really both good. Very good.
Quite nice.
And we talked about too with the glassware for beer. Traditionally, it was pint glasses, but I think what you've got here is perfect. You can do the same thing with wine. You swirl it, you get the aromas. To me, it's the aroma, the mouthfeel, and the finish, which is a lot of the same things you talk about in wine. And again, you'll see as we go up, the mouthfeel, particularly on the left side of this, is going to get more and more, more intense as we go forward.
Well, I think that's what's fascinating to me, Mike, just the first two. I mean, I'm used to drinking beer, but not smelling it. And it's really pretty nice to smell the beer before you even taste it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, people are so into beer right now, because you get that variety of aromas as well as flavor.
And I think when we open this one in particular, that really showcases that. This, as soon as you pop that thing open,
Yeah.
this whole area will just be filled with this beautiful floral, fruity smell. And I think that really draws people in particular to the New England IPA style, which is commonly described as this juicy kind of flavor where it's really, really fruity and just delicious.
So where do we go with number 3? Where are we
Yes,
heading now?
absolutely. So this is the Everweiss from Night Shift Brewing. So this is up near Boston, as Eli said earlier. So this is kind of a cool beer because they've been doing mixed fermentations for some time now. So by mixed fermentation, we're kind of getting into sour beer territory here. So it's a mixture of the common brewing yeast that is used in pretty much some type of that yeast is used in pretty much everything you drink. But then also there's a strain of bacteria that's pitched into these. In this case, it's lactobacillus. So they consider this a Berliner Weiss, which very commonly always has lactobacillus pitched into it. So this is a bacteria that like yeast, eats sugar in the wort, the unfermented beer. But one of the major byproducts from that bacteria is lactic acid.
Which is what provides this little tartness
Right.
and
Interesting.
sourness that we're going to
Exactly.
get. So this style of beer, I mean, I think it's one of these, my wife, for example, she can't stand these styles of beers.
I've heard of them. This is my first sour beer
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try.
It tends to be pretty much a love-hate thing, which again, I think you can find analogies in the wine world as well, right? There's certain people that,
I see Mike is taking a chance, and I'm going to love it. That was a big pour for my first one.
and just, you look at that, it's just, I mean, it's beautiful. Look at the color and,
It is beautiful.
I guess
Almost like a rosé.
yeah, and this has some fruit added, right, as
Yes.
well? Yeah.
So this, I'm going to screw it up unless I look at the can. So it's a mixed fermentation. We explained that before. So this is actually aged on kiwi strawberries and dried hibiscus. So,
Interesting.
So that gives it some of the flavor. I know I'm pouring very large pours here. I apologize. But
I get a citrus grapefruity smell right off the bat before even.
yep.
It's like a Marlboro 7 Blanc almost.
Yeah, I think when you get into this style of beer, you could probably really draw some parallels with white wine.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, or a rosé champagne type thing.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's exactly what I got. Like I said, the smell was sort of remind me of a Marlboro Sauvignon Blanc because that powerful grapefruitiness. But this is delicious.
Yeah.
Is the alcohol content on this comparable to the first two?
Yes, actually, I think this is right around 5. I don't see it on here. It's right around 5%, which is actually strong for a Berliner Weiss. Berliner Weiss traditionally only goes up to about 3.8%, something like that. So it's a very dry, tart, very drinkable, very
Refreshing,
non-intoxicating
yeah.
beer.
Perfect summertime type fare.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So this is still fairly light on alcohol, but it is strong for the style.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody, I mean, from a beer tourism standpoint, this is a great brewery. I mean, we've both been there. It's, I'd say, maybe 15 minutes from Logan Airport, so if you're ever flying in or out of Boston, perfect place. But you don't have to go all the way to Boston. If you go to Yankee Spirits in Sturbridge, they carry these guys and have a pretty full range of their beers as well. So Night Shift, again, is the brewery.
What I would say personally from what I've experienced tonight, these two first beers are backyard barbecue, backyard summer. That one is somewhere maybe in the Bahamas, Florida, sitting outside at the beach or something.
yeah.
That's where that goes right automatically. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the color. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very pretty beer, and that's one of the things I love about beer, and I'm sure it's true of wine as well, is that it's really a feast for all of the senses, right? If you take the time to appreciate it, it's a very lovely thing to look at. It's delicious. The smells are amazing. Mouthfeels are very important, so it really excites all of the senses. It's a really nice thing.
Actually, when we finally get through the 5, when we have some time left over, maybe you know this, to answer this question. I'm going to ask you, how did this all start? Why did people's interest in so many different styles of beer become so popular for the last, was it 10 years, really?
Yeah, I mean, the statistic I know in Connecticut is that in, I think, 2011, there was somewhere less than 20 craft breweries, and today there's over 50. So,
Wow.
and nationally, the trend is the same. There's more breweries in the U.S. now than any time in our history. And again, maybe you can elaborate on, I think, what's driven that. But I think a lot of it has been sort of the farm to table, the slow food, right? Sort of the appreciation of quality in general in things that we eat and drink. And I think that's partially led to it.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think so.
And there's this, in my mind, in the past 10 years, there's been this wholesale change in how the United States is viewed as a beer country, right? I think back in the 90s, you think beer countries, you think Germany, you think Belgium.
Right.
And that's still true. There's wonderful beer there. But in the U.S., you can get beers that are, traditional German beers that, sorry for anybody who's from Germany, they're made every bit as well as they make them in
Absolutely.
Germany.
That's, from what I understand, that's true.
And so the diversity of beers that are brewed and brewed well in the United States is really amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect thing for the American sort of, entrepreneurial spirit of just different ingredients and different recipes, and a brewery that I think was that I personally don't like everything they do, but from that standpoint, Dogfish Head, which people have heard of, they've always pushed the envelope of doing really interesting things, and that's something like in Germany or Belgium, you would have, they would probably have had pitchbooks at your brewery.
You would literally violate a rule.
Right, there'd be some law that says you can't do that. So,
Yeah.
And the other big change in New England has been state law changes, right? So, for example, now breweries in Connecticut can not only sell the beer, they can serve you pints, right? Which is great for, I think everybody on this table that I've been to all these breweries, and you can go there and you can have a pint. There's food trucks. It's a destination type activity.
Well, I think just like the the cooking channel and shows like that have done for chefs, because chefs are sort of like the rock stars now. Everybody wants to go to a place where they have their specialized chef. It's the same thing with beer now. I think you have specialized brewers that get such a buzz with what they're brewing that it just spreads with the internet and social media. Before you know it, you have a small little place that is so popular because the reputation of producing quality beer is so good, you almost can't keep up with demand.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can't have a New England beer show without talking a bit about Treehouse as an example. I mean, I remember going there in 2012, right when I moved here from Pennsylvania, shortly after they opened, and they were in this tiny little barn out in the woods.
Brimfield, Mass.
Yeah, in Brimfield, Massachusetts, and it was like there were 3 people there besides me on a Saturday morning. Now, if you're going to go and wait in line for growlers at Treehouse, be prepared to be there for a
Well,
while.
they opened
Yeah.
a $20 million brewery last year.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, I mean, it's
But is that good or bad? Because when they become too big, then do they lose some of their panache?
well, that's kind of a funny. You bring up a really good point, because I think what's happened is with we are the beneficiaries of this, but the quality level has gone up so much that the idea of waiting for beer and the scarcity,
Yeah.
it's kind of dying off at this point. I mean, I think, which is great for the consumer, because there's so many great choices here. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I should probably adjust what I said and say, at least in their previous location before they moved to where they are now.
Right.
It was not uncommon to wait 2, 3
Oh, yeah.
plus hours for a growler of beer.
Well, I've been looking forward to the last two, and I don't
Yeah.
want to run out of time before we
Oh,
try them.
absolutely,
So let's see what we got going here.
all right, oops, I gotta do this. And it's not quite like champagne, but I do want to make sure we don't have any.
That's part of the fun.
There we go. All right. So this is from New Park Brewing right here in West Hartford. They are kind of by the Home Depot, that area on New Park, and I'll hit you up first. They've been open only a year, and I think they are, as we were just talking about Treehouse, I think I would put them in sort of that style. Big into IPAs, which we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but.
But they do, the thing that I love about them, same thing with Treehouse. Everyone loves their IPAs, but they do other styles really, really well too. So they're a well-rounded brewery.
And I think, like Mike was saying, like as soon as you open this, you can just get it within maybe a foot or
it's
two, and it's just like,
unbelievable.
wow, yeah.
This is the lightest beer we've tried.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
going to be actually darker because of
Yep.
the bottom of it, but it packs a wallop of an aroma.
Right.
Wow.
So this is one of their sort of down under hop
Yeah, this is
beers.
called Spectrum. One of the hop, kind of in the hop revolution, has been hops from Australia, New Zealand varieties that were developed down there. This leverages those. And I think a lot of this, to get this really, the aromas are amazing, the mouthfeel, I think a lot of that comes from using some amount of wheat or flaked oat to kind of supplement the grain bill.
This is very floral to me. It's almost like
Yeah.
being in a garden with, or fresh herbs. I mean, if you were actually outside in a garden like that.
Yep.
It is really powerful.
Yeah. And as the last time I had this anyway, as it warms up a bit, you start to get more of like the pineapple kind of fruitiness to it, I think. But yeah, it's wonderful. And these new hops from New Zealand and Australia are really, really incredible.
And they've been in West Hartford how long?
About a year.
About a year?
Yeah, just over a year, I think.
Wow. That is really, really nice. I mean,
There's nothing wrong with
I don't know what I would pair that with, but damn, that's good.
And that's kind of the analogy I was using with like a big Aussie Shiraz, right? It's something it's kind of hard to pair, but is really nice just to kick back and like savor and enjoy. So, all right, yeah, let's get this open. So we.
Funny thing, each one of these beers is so unique in its own way.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see how you can do a beer pairing just as complex as you could do a wine pairing.
And this is all from Connecticut, one from Mass, right? So this really showcases how wonderful the beer scene is.
There's another glass for you.
All right. Well, you can have this is from the brewery that this is from, so very, very appropriate. So.
Now that looks like a nice dark stout.
Yeah, we can
finish
finish
that.
that. Yeah, yeah. So this is an imperial stout. So we're talking like 8-9% alcohol. And I think again, I sort of chose this as a nod to the show. This is aged actually in Jonathan Edwards port wine barrels. So this brewery, Beard, yes, and the guy that owns it does have a beard, as you'll see, and a lot of brewers do. But yeah, down in Stonington, Connecticut, aged for probably maybe a year, 11 months or so in the port wine barrels.
Is stout one of the oldest beers produced, or there's other varietals that are older than that?
As far as stouts,
Yeah.
There are-
Stout's been around for a while, haven't they?
They have been, it's got to be right up there with things like pale ales that have been around for quite some time. Pilsner has been around, of course, for a very long time.
Yeah, and one of the things that's popular with stouts is to finish them in barrels, whiskey barrels, bourbon barrels, adding lots of, so again, it's, as you talked about, it's just a totally different style. This is like more like an after dinner drink type thing.
Yeah, or you're just, if you're sitting at a bar when you're sort of nursing a drink.
Yeah. And this is one we talked about. I think everything here over you'd probably want in the 45, 50 degree range. This would be fine, 55, and up. Let it warm. And that's actually, when you go to a bar, sometimes you'll get a stout, it'll be too cold. So let it warm up, let those aromas and the coffee and the roasted malts and all that kind of come out.
One of the wonderful things about this beer is, I remember when Eli went down there and got a case of this, and he gave me a bottle. It was almost overdone on the port character that you got out of it.
Yeah,
Let it hang out for 2 years.
This is
and it's
aged for 2 years. Yeah, so the port characteristics, I still get some of the raisin-iness of that, if that's a word. But it's a lot more integrated. It's not as sort of bracing. And it really is a beautiful beer.
Actually, can all these beers, obviously this one is, but can any of these be stored for any time? Are these all meant to be drank in the next several years?
Well, it's funny, the New Park, they say right here, drink within 3 days, right? So, but yeah, I would say the sour maybe and the stout could probably hang out for a while in the can. I mean, unlike wine, because of the way they're, with caps or they don't, you're not going to get the same evolution, but.
So in our remaining 2 minutes, I wanted to quickly ask you, Mike, how long have you been home brewing yourself?
Oh boy, when I was 20 years old, I had a friend that was trying to get me into it. So pretty much as soon as I turned 21, I started. So
Just last week, right?
Last week or about 11 years ago, one of the two.
And you've been enjoying it?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's a great hobby. It's anyone who likes cooking or anything like that. It's wonderful.
And I know you like wine and you like beer, so I got to tell you, you cover the whole gambit. God bless you.
Yeah, and I think it was, I grew up on the West Coast where beer has always been sort of a kind of a key thing, and then in Connecticut it's just been, as I said, it's been since 2014. It's been amazing, just the growth not only in our state but in the whole region, and we've been sort of the lucky recipients of that tonight.
And it's not really subsiding anytime soon, at least from what I can see.
No, and I think what will happen is some of the, so there will be some fallout, right? Just like there is in any sort of industry. But yeah, quality will win out. We will win out. The prices will probably drop a little bit. Yeah, it's all good. So.
And with Connecticut's strange liquor laws, that's still another issue. That's for another whole show, probably. Even when it comes to things like beer being produced right here in our own state.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge and something that. That in fact I think recently in the legislature people are coming up and trying to change a few of the sort of outstanding weird laws that we do have. So.
Well, anything that would make Connecticut lose money, our legislator is good to do, right? I mean, we have a growing popular beer industry. Let's try to screw it up anywhere we can.
Right, particularly in New England, because you can cover. I mean, there's so many great places to visit, and so yes, we are at a little bit of a competitive disadvantage if you want to buy more than 9 liters. That is a problem, but.
Well, I want to thank both Mike Task for coming down from Vernon, I believe.
Absolutely.
And Eli, always, I think you're in Thailand or Vernon?
Vernon also.
Vernon, yep. I know. I really appreciate you coming down. I've really enjoyed you on the show. I know Jim is too. Jim, once again, you missed a good show, and I would suggest all my viewers try some of these beers. I mean, even if you like wine, this has really been impressive to me this evening. So I want to thank you both for coming in, and until next time, keep all of us in your beer cellar.
Cheers.